Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I am doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this week I had 13 comics to talk about, so let's get started. Number 13 for me, so going least favorite to Best Pick of the Week, and number 13 is Batgirl issue 40. Very disappointed to see this book so low. I am a humongous Batgirl fan, a humongous Barbara Gordon fan, but the series just feels like it has no direction. I hate that they keep rehashing this Oracle villain or making Oracle a villain. They've been doing it since Batgirl Birds of Prey when DC Rebirth launched, and now they keep rehashing it, and I just want a more clear direction for Barbara Gordon. And also really not a fan of the artwork. It's very, very sketchy to me. I don't really like the line work. And even these cliffhangers with the Year of the Villain, with the whole Lex Luthor symbol, feels so just thrown in there, and I have not been a fan of that. Let me find the page of that. And I feel like it keeps taking away from the actual story that the book is trying to do. So, for me, I gave this 1.5 stars. I was really disappointed with this one, and hopefully the series finds a better direction. But moving on to number 12. And number 12 this week is The Immortal Hulk, issue 25. This is surprising. I think this is the lowest I've ever had Immortal Hulk. I love this book, and yeah, this issue is very different. It's still horror-like, it's just a different type of horror book where it's more of a post-apocalyptic world with nobody in it except the Hulk, because obviously he's immortal, and the dialogue wasn't my favorite thing. It's going into more the scientific aspect of this world and how it's working, and I just wasn't that interested in it. Also, it's a pretty pricey book. It's $6 for the story we got, which again is very different, and I like that it was experimental. Just wasn't really my thing. But hopefully the next issue will be back to our character-driven narratives and in the horror style that we all enjoy. But it was kind of cool to see a different artist on this book. But again, it didn't latch on to me for this one. So I'm going to give that 2 stars, and that is number 12. Alright, moving on to number 11. Number 11 for me is The Amazing Spider-Man Full Circle, issue 1, which I actually thought was a mini-series. It's just a really giant book. This is a $10 book, which is why it's low, because you really need to invest a lot of money into it. Now, the reason it wasn't least favorite of the week is because I do like the concept of this book, where we get to see all these different writers and artists come together to tell one giant story, and they're like, alright, I just left you a cliffhanger with werewolves. You know, have a field day. And it's even cool by the end of the issue, we get to see the emails that they were sending back and forth to tell the stories. So I thought that was a really cool way to kind of have the internet / social media aspect of our, creating into a print comic like this. So that was cool. But the story itself, I wasn't really invested in. It's a fever dream, literally, of werewolves and space, and it's bananas. And for me, I just couldn't get into the plot that much. But again, I applaud the creators for doing something like this, but I just don't know if it was worth $10 for me. So overall, I'm going to give Amazing Spider-Man Full Circle 2 stars, and that is number 11? Yeah. Moving on to number 10, this has also kind of been the lowest the series has been in a really long time, which I guess is a good thing that it's been this long, but a bad thing that it's low, and that is The Amazing Spider-Man issue 32. So, as you guys know, I'm not a huge Spider-Man 2099 fan, and I swear I didn't go into this saying, oh man, I don't want to, I don't usually like Spider-Man 2099, but I'll say that I don't think it was that new reader friendly, so if you don't know anything about Miguel, and for me, I know enough about him, but I'm not a hardcore fan of the character, I don't think it gives you enough to say, ooh, I gotta follow this guy. And then there's a lot of other stuff going on, like Teresa's spy mission. We get to see Peter trying to adjust that Mary Jane's away, and also still dealing with school, so I feel like they try to do too much and didn't have quite of a direction in this issue. So overall, I gave this 2.5 stars. Also, I do like Ryan Ottley a little bit more on this series. It was a little jarring to see Patrick Gleason's art. Oh, and there's a page that keeps falling out of this. I don't know how that keeps happening, but I think the staple kind of ran out. So anyways, I want to show you Patrick Gleason's artwork, but then you have that page that keeps falling out. But yeah. It's a little different. It's a little bit more cartoonier. It's also a little darker as well. I don't really love the faces I like usually the spider costumes with his art style. Like, I like this scene. That's pretty good. But yeah, when it comes to the faces, everything looks really cartoony and their lips look really big. So I'm not a huge fan of that. This is an example of Mary Jane over there. So overall, like I said, giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 10, I believe. Yes, moving on to number 9. This is also a bit lower than usual, and that is Angel issue 6. This is a second part to Hellmouth, the crossover that's going on between Buffy and Angel. And I like this issue, but I kind of wish it connected to Hellmouth a little bit more. We get a small connection to it, but it's more towards the side of Gunn and Fred, who are, you know, we're learning more about their new versions of them, and we get to see Lilith. We don't get to see Angel at all in this issue, but if you're a big Spike fan, this is the first time I feel like we've really seen the modern version of Spike, because he's kind of been in the background a bit, so that was cool. But again, I wish it had to do with Hellmouth a little bit more, but we are learning more about these villains who want Gunn and Fred for some reason. Fred gets kidnapped by the end. And there's also this other character that kind of feels like a classic Angel one-shot episode where she has this dagger and she's like this goth kid who's, you know, who has this magical dagger. So I thought that was kind of cool. And the artwork is really solid too. So overall, I'm going to give that 3.5 stars. Not the best issue of Angel, but still a fun one. And of course, it's cool to see that they're exploring more of Gunn and Fred. Moving on to number 8, which is Batman Superman issue 3. And I would say this book would be so much better if the internet didn't exist, because we know all the plot points that are going on, and that's kind of what sucks, is that they spoiled this story already because they have to release all these one-shots coming out for it. So we know that Jim Gordon was going to be part of this Who Laughs scenario, and everything else is just very telltale. We knew what was going to happen. And then, of course, you need to have the villain year thing, which I believe I talked about before, with Batgirl, which I'm like, oh, why do they have to keep having this? And they keep cutting us from our story. And same for Blue Beetle. That would have been a really cool reveal that Jaime is part of this, but we knew that he was going to be part of this. So I wish there was more surprises in this one. It's still a good series. It's still cool to see characters you wouldn't expect to be infected. But yeah, it definitely loses some steam because of the spoilers as well. But the artwork is drop dead gorgeous for this book, and still one of the better DC books out there, and definitely one of the better metal books in my opinion. I think it's a lot easier to follow than some of the other ones. So Batman Superman issue 3 gets 3.5 stars. Alright, moving on to number 7. I was a little torn on this issue. So The Amazing Mary Jane issue 1. So I was obviously really excited for this book. I'm a huge Mary Jane fan, and I actually really like the opening of this book. I like that it's the idea that Mary Jane doesn't want to be the generic woman lead role, and she very easily, I would say, but in a good way, figures out that Mysterio is actually behind all this. And they have an interesting conversation, but then once it gets to Peter and Mary Jane's conversation on the phone, it gets kind of weird, and there's this dance session they have, which kind of comes out of nowhere. He's like, oh, do you hear that music? Let's dance. So I don't know what that was all about. So I didn't quite like that, and kind of took me out of the book a lot. And then also the cliffhanger kind of took me out of it. It's like, all right, now the Sinister Six is back for some reason. So I really liked the beginning. I liked the movie stuff. I liked the acting stuff. But once it got into the superhero thing, which you would want to be great in a superhero book, it just kind of lost me. So obviously I'm going to pick up more, and hopefully it leans more into that intro, because again, I liked most of the issue. It just kind of lost me by the end. But artwork was solid overall. I think it had some good action, some good effects for Mysterio, so that was cool. But overall, I'm going to give this 3.5 stars. Not a bad issue, but kind of a weird issue, and it didn't really match my humor in my opinion. Alright, moving on to number 6. Number 6 for me is Dial H for Hero, issue 8. So this is also kind of a different one-shot issue. So last issue we had, alright, let's get into the point of view of the people in Metropolis and what it was like to get superpowers. And now we get the point of view of the origin story of Thunderbolt and the Operator. And spoiler alert, we find out that they're the same person. And I really like the style of this book, where we get to see the beginning of Thunderbolt Thunderbolt story and how they meet up to say, oh God, they're the same person. So I also really like the intro of how it got into the point of view of the reader is like, all right, turn the page if you want to find out. So I really like the uniqueness of this narrative and how you get to see, again, one page is the beginning, one page is the end. But I think because of that, it kind of gets a little lost the storyline and the connection to this to these both these characters. But I still love this book, and the artwork is amazing, and it's cool to get this origin story. But I am ready to get back to Miguel and Summer. I think having 2 one-shots back to back, you know, it kind of ruined the flow a little bit, but again, still a good book, and I'm excited to see where the series will go. So, Dial H for Hero issue 8 gets 3.5 stars, and that is number 6. You're going to be surprised by this, guys, but number 5 for me is Marauders, issue 1. I got the regular cover and the variant, but of course I got to get the Kitty Pryde variant. And I'm a bit torn on this book, because there's a lot of things I enjoyed. I like the idea that Kitty that Kitty can't get into the island. So I thought that was cool. And obviously you're curious why. Like, out of all the people, she was the leader of the X-Men. Does she not belong there? And that's going to be part of the story of, like, how do some of these X-Men not be part of that? But I think this book, and the reason I'm torn, it misses a good amount of emotional beats there. I think Kitty could have mourn that a bit more, like, hey, why am I not good enough? Especially if you're piggybacking off of the whole wedding situation, her not really being leader anymore because, you know, the X-Men are obviously going a different direction. I think it misses a lot of emotional beats. And then kind of shoehorns this Kate thing for no reason. I didn't quite like that, but I like the reason why she has this patch on her nose and obviously the blue eye, the black and blue eye. Another thing I liked and disliked about this book is her relationship with Emma. Obviously, it's a very, very complicated one, and I kind of wish that they played off that a bit more, because we get to see Kitty accept being this pirate. I feel a little bit too quickly. Again, there was no emotion to get to that point besides, okay, I fought these people, which was an epic fight. And I think there's a lot of cool parts to this issue, because look how badass Kitty is here and how she uses her powers. I thought that was really cool. So that's something I really enjoyed. And her interaction with her team. That's another really positive part here. I think they picked a really, good team. We get to see Storm, Iceman, Pyro's thrown in there. But, people that are important to Kitty. We get to see a drunk Kitty. I think there's a lot of good fun and laughter in this issue, which makes sense because Dugan did Deadpool for the longest time. So I like those beats a lot, and knowing Dugan's writing, I'm sure we're gonna get, or Duggan, I'm sure we're gonna get a lot of that emotional resonance too. But they had to jam-pack a lot of information in this issue, and it just happened a little bit too quickly for me. But overall, I think this was a really good setup to the story and where the series can go, and I hope the character beats follow along with it. So Marauders issue 1 gets 3.5 stars. There's some points as a Kitty fan that I was a little torn with, but I do like the overall plot for it. Alright, moving on to number 4, and that is Jane Foster Valkyrie issue 4, which I got the Mary Jane cover for. And this issue I really enjoyed. There's some nitpicks I had. So the small nitpicks I did have is that the beginning, it kind of lost me a bit with the Mephisto and his, dealings of the devil. But then it got funny. After that opener, him actually making these deals and then finding out there's another Valkyrie was really cool. And I liked the twist where Valkyrie, Jane is not actually a Valkyrie yet because she hasn't brought anyone to Valhalla. So I thought that was a really good twist, and I'm excited to see where that's going to end up going. And the thing that really makes this book is the groundedness, where we get to see Jane in an apartment with a horse in her apartment and having to deal with that. How is she going to afford this apartment now that she's not a doctor? And then her awkward interaction with the character who used to be half Valkyrie, I thought that was really cool. But then Doctor Strange comes in. I didn't quite understand why they needed the whole audience to be in front of them and have, Jane be like, hey, let's talk about coffee. And then I felt like there's conversations that didn't need the crowd, so I kind of wish that was reworked a little bit differently. But overall, this is a good issue, a very solid issue, and again, plays off of, hey, Jane's a normal person who so happens to be part of this Asgardian culture now. So, and also the artwork is some of the best artwork, not just at Marvel, but in a superhero comic. And it's such a pleasure that we get this every issue, which is so cool. And the coloring is good, so very solid issue for me. So overall, I gave that 4 stars, and that is or maybe I gave it 3.5 actually. Oh no, I gave it 4. So I gave that 4 stars, and that is number 4. Moving on to number 3, which is Ghost Spider, issue 3, and I also got the Mary Jane variant. Obviously, there's a theme here. But this issue, at first I thought it was just going to be a filler, because we get to see a little bit more of Australian Girl and, you know, her motives of why she's working with Jackal. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess we're just going to be learning more about her. But then, right as Gwen is used to all this, she's enjoying life, her nemesis, the Bodega Bandit, ends up getting shot, and you don't know what's going to happen to him. And that really brings up the stakes, and it makes you feel like Gwen in that position where he's like, okay, everything's going well, I'm learning more about my routine, and, you know, nothing's going well, because you're a spider person. In the background, you have 2 jackals having their own plans here. You got Australian creature, I don't know what she ends up, armadillo, I guess, an Australian armadillo creature, werewolf thing happening, who might be your friend, might not be. So there's a lot of things happening in the background, but that one shocker for Gwen really made this issue, and that emotional beat for Gwen was really interesting. So I'm curious to see if we're going to see more Bodega Bandit, but this was a really solid issue. Great artwork as always. That really balances the fun and the emotion here. So I'm going to give that 4 stars, and that is number 3. Moving on to number 2, which is Second Coming, issue 4. I love this book. I just keep laughing, and it's just so smart, and it has a lot of great beats here. A lot of good funny beats, but a lot of good character moments that suck you in. And, you know, in this issue we get to see Jesus in jail, because he's thrown in there because people think he's crazy. And he meets this guy who also people think he's crazy because he's eating pine cones. And he's a good guy. He even takes a spork for Jesus, and there's this really interesting conversation that people don't believe he's Jesus, and how his word has been lost in our reality, and how our world has become the way it is. And in the background we get to see Sunspot, and I think that's his name, and his girlfriend, and also his what are they, sidekicks, I guess, and they're trying to find Jesus, and they're like, where in the world is Jesus? So there's a lot of fun and a lot of good, clever jokes throughout, but then you get those really good emotional beats of Jesus saying, well, how did this all go wrong, you know, and then learning more about this other side character who ends up being in jail / I guess it's not a mental hospital, I guess it's just jail. So I thought that was really interesting, and definitely one of the better issues of this series, and I love this book. It's really good, so I think a lot more people should be reading it. So Second Coming issue 4 gets 4.5 stars, and that is number 2. Moving on to number 1, and it's funny because my least favorite was Batgirl, and I haven't read a great Batman book in a while, I feel, and I mean a while, saying like a couple of months or so. And then I read this, I'm like, this is exactly what I want from a Batgirl story, and that is Batman Curse the White Knight issue 4. The opener is mind-blowing. I love the opener where we get to see Barbara and Commissioner Gordon, so Barbara when she's young, just talking about like a bully in school. And we get to see Commissioner Gordon said, well, you know, you fight back. You're just like me. You're a fighter. You're not a princess. You fight back whenever something's done to you. That's the number 1 rule. And then, you know, she ends up going to school happy because her dad gave her a good pep talk. And throughout each panel is him dying. And we get to see him flatline. And then you get to see him say goodbye. And then that's when he dies. So that opener just already was so beautiful. And then the rest of the issue is everyone mourning. Barbara especially, where, you know, rage is in her eyes, red's in her eyes, and she doesn't know what to do besides she wants to kill this person. And she is ready. She wants to pull the trigger. And I would say the little thing that prevented this to get 5 stars was honestly the villain, and the overall plot, which is more about Azrael, and that's where it took me out a little bit, but it brought us a really good scene where Barbara again is ready to kill this guy, and she breaks her back, it looks like. So what I do like, it has to do with her this time. It's not just like, all right, I'm gonna shoot you because I need to hurt Batman. This is her story, and if you're gonna break her back and play up that story again, I think they did it in a good way, and I'm curious to see where Barbara's story will go from here. But also Batman, obviously mourning, Dick Grayson trying to handle this. It's just a really beautiful issue, and yeah, definitely one of the best Batman books I've read in a while, and definitely one of the best Batgirl books I've read in a while. So if you're a Batman fan, pick this one up. It was really good. It was really emotional, and I think it has a lot of good callbacks to what we enjoy from Batman, but especially from Batgirl, because, a big root of Batgirl's character is her relationship with her father. The reason why she became Batgirl is because she couldn't be a cop, because she wanted to be like her dad. So to have this, it's such a beautiful story that I wish that the regular continuity would tell. And it also has to do with secret identities. Are they good? Are they bad? So it really breaks down what we know about superheroes in a way too, and the artwork is mind-blowing as always. It's really cool to get the writer and the artist be the same person and create the story, and you can really tell the flow because of that. And again, that opener, man, with the different panels was so beautiful. So Batman Curse of the White Knight issue 4 gets 4.5 stars, and that is number 1. Let me know in the comments below what were your favorite comics of the week, what were your least favorite comics of the week, and everything in between. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno, and go check out my comics like Father Like Daughter, they call her the Dancer. Go check out my Twitter and Facebook, and every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time is Comic Book Weekly, and that's a show where we review our favorite comics of the week, and also the comic book news that came out that week. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Bye!